Welcome to another Crypto Spendthrift podcast episode. So this is a very different episode from usual. It is, in fact, a sponsored post. So, just a little preface first. There will not be a lot of these sponsored posts, just because if there was a lot, they'd be super low quality, and that is a fact. So, if the coin doesn't instantly click, doesn't instantly make sense, doesn't instantly kind of think, oh, this is a solution to a real problem, it will 100% not be featured ever. But today we have something that definitely clicked instantly, and the fact that it wasn't trying to advertise for an ICO made it even more like amenable to doing this. So what we're talking about today is Polymath. And since, like I said, they already had their ICO and it was more of a private sale, so instead of just trying to shill people into an ICO, this is more like raising awareness. So good on them. So start off, let me just give you an overview of what Polymath is. It's really a giant solution to help navigate legal and regulatory hurdles some coins face, or more than likely, they just outright avoid. And as you know, many coins avoid the United States because they don't want to deal with the regulation. They don't want to deal with any of the processes, and Polymath kind of aims to simplifying that. So they describe themselves as a security token protocol which embeds regulatory requirements in the tokens themselves, which are then only available to verified and authorized participants. And the security token protocol aims to be a standard for blockchain-based securities. It will aid issuers through the process, third-party legal delegates, co-developers, and know your customer verifiers, and offer their services within the Polymath provider marketplace. So like I said off the bat, it's something that you can obviously see that it's a solution to a problem that's very obvious. You don't have to think about it, like you don't have to convince yourself that this is actually a useful concept or not. So that was one of the positives I saw. Like a lot of other ICOs where you kind of have to think about, why is this even a thing? What's the use? Is this actually a problem? But obviously with Polymath, being compliant and following security regulation is something a lot of these coins struggle with, especially when you see them completely avoid the United States. So, considering the current climate, embracing regulation might be good for people who are at least raising money. And I really do think this year and next year will be a pretty critical year, considering the SEC started off pretty strongly smacking down ICOs and other things that they thought were either fraudulent or non-compliant with regulatory practices. And some of these ICOs believe that words will protect them, saying that they're not a security token but a utility token, but that's already been proven that if you're raising money, you will 100% be considered a security token. And it's best to just follow the regulatory framework, or I guess take the easy way out and just avoid America and everything related to America. But that's kind of where Polymath comes in. It's looking to kind of go on that path of tokenization. And I talked about this if you listen to my normal podcast. Tokenization is one of the key things people are looking at with blockchain, and Polymath's doing securities, which that was a natural progression, obviously, and makes more sense to me than like other concepts of tokenization that I've explored in previous episodes, because tokenizing securities is a lot more straightforward and less problematic than trying to tokenize digital versions of physical goods. So they also have a one up on some of these more supply chain oriented things because tokenization security is just a lot more simple and makes more sense. So that's been a brief overview. We'll dive deeper in a second. But first, let's look at this team. First up is Trevor Koverko, the CEO. So what stood out to me while looking at him is how he founded many media companies and made the world's first VR exit in 2015. He was an angel investor and an early Bitcoin adopter and blockchain project advisor, which these last two parts is most likely going to be the most critical part to his success, that he already knew the early environment. He knows how to navigate between the OGs and the newer people, and also the institution, because there's three different perspectives in cryptos: the OGs, the newbies, and the institutions, and sometimes they all clash. And the fact that he was an early adopter really helps smooth out at least the main clash between the OG and the more institutional side that it seems like they will be working with more. Next up is the COO, Chris Hauser, a licensed lawyer and has practiced commercial law for a number of years in representing international corporation high-profile litigation. If there was not a lawyer on the main team, I'd be concerned, because the main hurdle here is legal hurdles, regulatory hurdles, and kind of understanding what you can and cannot do. And having a lawyer right there as a chief operating officer, I'm sure will be very beneficial to navigating complex laws that many of these ICOs obviously run into since they were voting the U.S. Sukhveer Sangera is next, and he worked as an engineer for LedgerX, Derlet, TD Securities, and NASA. Some impressive firms there. Tracy Lipariulo as the chief marketing officer, worked on blockchain projects and wallets and exchanges. Founder of Untraceable, an event marketing agency, and co-founder of the first Bitcoin conference in Canada and largest Ethereum hackathon in the world. These are 2 points that will probably be definitely beneficial to them spreading and getting those key ICOs into their group, into their platform. Because I feel like you can have a good product, but in the end, outreach can make the biggest difference if your platform actually survives or not. And obviously, since I'm doing this, their outreach is pretty good, and I'm sure they're still looking to expand that outreach, and we'll definitely be tapping into this chief marketing officers network. Next up, Shannon Clark, full stack developer, CEO and co-founder of CarePoint Solutions, a digital health solution for the Caribbean. Pablo Riaz, Solidity developer. What stood out about him is his experience leading a venture capital firm in Latin America. And that kind of connects to what I was mentioning above, having someone with that institutional, more traditional network or perspective to understand what they're looking for and how do you link these newer non-traditional crypto investors and creators with more traditional investors, and how do you work that in with a regulatory framework that exists. And finally, Graham Moore, VP Marketing and Communications, who's creative director at Spartan Race, one of Canada's largest independent investment advisory firms and analysts of one of the world's largest real estate brokerages. So that kind of ties into what I just said about having someone to be able to help the CEO, Trevor, to connect that institution and crypto OG side together to create a beneficial marketplace. So this team seems pretty solid. No really red flags, and all of them have pretty good resumes. That's a lot more than you can say for many other projects. Some of them have either pretty sketchy people or people a little too anonymous for the amount of money they raise, but it's not really a concern for this project, which is good. Okay, as I said, the wide range of expertise is probably the most beneficial thing I see from this team. If it was people with very similar expertise, like a bunch of tech bros trying to navigate finance, I wouldn't really be optimistic about this, because this is definitely something that is not only require skill for the base platform, but also a lot of networking and outreach, which is what will really make and break this platform, in my opinion. And I'll talk about that later. So since this team has a lot of wide range of expertise, I think they'll bring a lot to the table in terms of ensuring execution is where they want it to be. The only thing I'd say is if they had someone with a more direct relationship with a state or a national SEC or a CFTC, which would be going a long way in forging compliance and helping direct crypto as a whole to avoid real big legislation pitfalls in the US. But what can you ask for? I'm sure getting someone with that kind of background and network wouldn't be too easy, and I'm sure a lot of them in those two organizations probably rather stay away from any blockchain related companies. So can't fault them too much for not having someone with a more direct relationship to the regulatory institutions. So onwards to a little bit of a deeper dive next. The platform aims to simplify things for these ICO teams. They won't need advanced technological knowledge, and it will guide them through every step from creation to fundraising to secondary market trading, while complying with strict regulation. Since the ICO market has been booming in the past year, it raised $2 billion. So if a platform comes up and simplifies the process even more and actually allows US investors to be able to get through in any other country, minus probably China, because China is kind of on the crazy side with their relations, but allows this more of the world where they have the funds for investing in all these projects. It'll allow the ICO market to boom even more, most likely. And also, I think it'll help really tone down on scams, because people obviously flock to lower risk ICOs that are compliant with government regulations. And since they're compliant with government regulations, that means there will 100% be pitfalls if these ICOs don't actually do everything legit and try to get away somehow. It's a very obvious choice for investors to go for these lower risk ICOs that more than likely have better business plans and more of an ability to execute than random like Bitcoin talk ICOs that are launching off of a cool million just so they could work for a little bit and then fizzle out. So that's one benefit this could bring to the entire market, is having a place where a bunch of regulated ICOs can rest, and as long as it's not kind of gated to only accredited investors, it will definitely help clear out a lot of the more scammy ICOs for being on the radar for people. And I'm not saying it'll totally eliminate, because people are greedy, but I feel like it would definitely help improve quality of ICOs that we see. Um, they also mention the data and the token. So blockchain's public most cases, as we know, but with this, the purchasers are pseudonymous, and while transaction data is public, as long as you treat this like any other crypto, you won't have to worry about revealing your own personal information. And the data will be kind of, it'll only be sent to who needs to see it, like the KYC providers, the law firms, and the smart contract developers. And I want to kind of move off of this to talk about the little marketplace system that they have. So for all the people that I mentioned, they have a little marketplace to help ICOs go through the process by finding people who could specifically help them with whatever. And I'm not sure how well that'll work out, considering I kind of foresee there being a lot of ICOs and then a very few amount of good quality people in either in, I don't think it will be a problem with KYC, but mainly in smart contract developers, because that is something that if it's not done correctly, it will be disastrous. But I feel like they won't have a problem finding KYC providers or law firms, but smart contract developers are going to be very lucrative on this platform once it's more mature and released. And they do talk about how their marketplace will facilitate some of the better market participants in the areas of legal delegation, smart contract writing, or KYC providers by how they're structuring their marketplace. I assume it's going to be kind of similar to how Bounty OX handles its market, and kind of relies on people, multiple parties policing the quality of whoever is attempting to do the work. The biggest thing they have here is their standardization. They're developing a new token standard called ST20, which has KYC, so know your customer, embedded into tokens at the protocol level, and they will be launched on a Polymath network Polymath network, and it'll be able to help coordinate token investors, issuers, developers, KYC providers, and legal delegates together for the launching and trading of security tokens. So, as we've seen that the standard for Ethereum has really been one of the key reasons why Ethereum's been the main platform of choice that all these coins have launched off of and based themselves off of, because standardization really does breed more efficiency and more quantity. And having this new standardization has KYC embedded into the token could see this being the choice for ICOs and really benefit Ethereum by kind of freeing up that network and easing scaling for Ethereum, which would be good for everyone in general. But as I'll keep mentioning, adoption's my main concern. If adoption works, obviously this is going to be major, but getting people on a system is always the hardest thing to do. And I feel like they're going about adoption well, and that's mainly because I've seen a lot of stuff about them going out and creating partners. One that really stood out was the recent one with Overstock, and having this relationship with Overstock could be one of the major things for them, considering Overstock is also kind of aims to help get ICOs compliant with their T0 platform, and Polymath is advising them with this. So having that relationship, even if it is kind of slightly competing platforms, is beneficial to both of them in the end of this. And they had a slew of other partners that they're working with for the other aspects, like the KYC and all that other stuff. So it's really worth monitoring it's worth monitoring them to see what other partners they pick up to help kind of kickstart their platform, the market side of it. And another notable thing is the Telegram group. The partners kind of showcase sentiment on the more company institutional side of things, but how big and massive the Telegram group signals the more traditional crypto level of things, and the fact that I think they have the biggest Telegram for blockchain project shows there's a lot of people interested in this project. And who knows what it'll do short term, because sometimes having a lot of people is kind of bad short term, but having a lot of people invested long term is one of the healthiest thing a coin can have, considering it being controlled by a few people just leaves it in room for manipulation, but it being more evenly distributed makes the market behave a lot more naturally, and allows the coin to not be at the whims of investors, but on its own merit. And so that's been kind of my Polymath overview, my initial thoughts, untainted by anything. I mean, before I close it completely, I know it kind of seems like, oh, this is a sponsored post, of course you're gonna speak beneficial of it. And I'll say true, but I wouldn't have accepted it if I wasn't going to speak beneficial of it most of the time, because I do get a decent amount of emails for some things, and sometimes it's garbage and I kind of ignore it, or I do other things. But when I see a project that actually could have a potential, even if I didn't have the most attention to it beforehand, I'm amenable to working with them. So, closing statements here. The route Polymath is taking seems like it will definitely survive the hype. I mean, forming a platform instead of an application was one of the first things that showed that they were looking to sustain out the hype. And the fact that it's kind of hitting a market that has nothing but up in its future, because ICOs, there's been a lot of talk about ICOs kind of changing funding models, and how it could easily become something that is regularly used instead of the traditional models we have here now. And the only real caveat with that is if only accredited investors are allowed in. Still, even if this ICO model where it's more regulated and scams are filtered out, and that's my real only other concern on the ICO side of things, that might really be a problem for Polymath, or a problem for the crypto market in general, especially in the US. But despite that, Polymath is looking like it's doing some major strides to really helping the whole market out. If it and any other partnerships with it kind of help irons out the ICO side of things and lays down that regulation, because the ICO side of the market is what needs the regulation more than the market in general. Like coins themselves, they're fine, but these ICOs are the bad bunch, are really tainting crypto's name. And this is definitely a solution that I believe has the chance of reducing the amount of those bad actors. But as I was saying earlier, that the major risk of adoption, and if there's no big ICOs that adopt it or adopt their standard token that they're pushing, this will just fizzle out and will be one of the many coins that had a good solution to a problem, but didn't really go anywhere. However, I kind of feel like that won't be the case because all this partnerships in the Telegram, and it just seems like the community around it is really rallying behind Polymath. So it dying prematurely, it seems like a minor concern. And my final thing I want to talk about is, it's kind of upsetting that it's not on a real exchange. That's definitely one of the things I can judge it for that makes me skeptical in the short term, but in the long term, this obviously has value. But not being on a decent exchange, it's only on IDEX and EtherDelta. I mean, there might be some opportunities to anyone who wants to risk going on EtherDelta, but as soon as it goes to a real exchange, you can see Polymath really do some crazy stuff. Especially since CoinMarketCap is not even really reporting it correctly. So there's that little exchange side input. And this has definitely been longer than I thought it would be. But to summarize, Polymath seems like it... I really want Polymath to succeed just because I feel like it would be beneficial to crypto as a whole. Getting these ICOs regulated and shifting investors' money to something that can actually be legally pursued easily, well, easier, in the effect that someone in the company isn't doing something right. And Polymath facilitating this regulatory compliance is beneficial to you and me, even if we don't like Polymath itself. So that's one of the reasons I can get behind this coin. I can get behind this team and this platform itself. And that's really the main reason you should be behind it. I said a lot more interesting things and a lot more things that might benefit you as an investor, but the fact that they're helping things get compliant in an sphere that is damaging crypto as a whole is really the driving force to me being super cool with even doing the sponsored post. And I'll leave you with that because I seriously didn't expect to talk this long about Polymath. Kind of surprised myself. I'll be posting kind of a notes that I went off of on the website, so check that out near noon to 3 p.m. Eastern time. Rate the podcast as all and share it with your friends. And if you're a new listener, just keep tuning in, because if I get more of these, more growth and more sponsored posts, that means quality is going to go through the roof. And thanks for any old listeners who have been suffering with the roller coaster of quality that's been going on. But look forward to high quality sponsored posts, and look forward to more interview sections where I just talk to coin creators. More of those are coming up this month. A lot of interviews scheduled. So, as always, I hope you enjoyed listening to the Crypto Spendthrift podcast. See ya on Monday.